Hey, everybody. Eddie Ift here, host of the Wad Cast Podcast, which we're about to start in a few seconds. I know from listening to other podcasts that you don't really like to listen to the shit up front. You just want to go straight to the interview. That's what I always do. But please, I implore you, just listen to what I've got to say. I'll get through it as quickly as possible. I want to thank all of you for listening. That's what I like to do, first of all, because you've been very supportive of the show. And because of that, I'm going to continue doing it as often as possible. How'd you like me to bump it up to twice a week from once a week? Let me know. Send me messages. I'm getting nothing. Tweet me, Instagram me, whatever. Numbers are good, but I'm not hearing from you as much as I do, or used to. So please send me a message. If you'd like me to bump the show up twice a week, I'm thinking about doing it. Make it a little more consistent. Hopefully it'll be the same quality. Lots of good interviews. Today we have Gary Reinl, who was one of our Reinl. I got to say it right. I mess up names so bad. Gary is a wonderful guy. I hung out with him a lot. He's coming to my show. Just what a great dude. And he's the expert on, anti-icing. He's, you've heard him on the episode before that we did. If you haven't, go back and listen to that before you listen to this. Cause we go over some of that stuff, but we expand on it a lot more. Gary has a background in not physical therapy, but, personal training and, physical fitness that goes way back. And, he basically is the guy to have, debunk the myth that ice is the best protocol, or rest, ice compression, elevation is the best protocol for an injury. Gary was nice enough to come by, do this interview, and so listen to he was on an episode, I don't know, probably about a year ago, maybe a little over a year ago, and then I had to have him back because I'm in Las Vegas. I know he's from here. I had so much more I wanted to ask him. I hope you enjoy. It was one of the highest rated episodes ever before. Let's hope this one goes there too. So anyone that gives to the Patreon, you get thrown into, you'll hear in this episode, all we do is talk about using electronics muscle stimulators to assist in injury. And, it's basically, besides just moving the muscle or moving the tissue or moving the joint, whatever, to make the blood flow, one of these electronic muscle stimulators is the best thing for it. So something like the MyoPucks, which I give, every week I give one away, a leopard claw and a MyoPucks to, a guest. Well, a guest gets one, and also anyone that donates $5 to our Patreon, which the Patreon's located at wadcastpodcast.com. You just log in there and you'll see the Patreon. Click through, donate $5 a month. That's all it is. It's basically $1 an episode, and you could win one of these things. It costs about $450. So this week's winner is, drum roll, please. Drum roll. I don't know what I'm doing. Vaughn Smith. How about that, Vaughn? You just won yourself a leopard claw and a MyoPucks. And listen to this episode and you'll learn how to use it completely. I got all kinds of dates coming up. If you want to see me, this week I'm in Las Vegas. You might get to catch me. Well, Friday night, I'm not in Las Vegas. Friday night, I'm in Los Angeles at the Microsoft Theater. Tickets are still available, cause there's about 7,000 tickets. And I don't know how many are left, but this thing usually does sell out. It's me, Felipe Esperanza, Ray Romano from Everybody Loves Raymond, Adam Ray, Jenna Lee, and I believe, Greg Fitzsimmons. Hilarious guy, Greg Fitzsimmons. We are all on the bill. It is a charity for Cedars-Sinai. Big show, Kevin and Bean, who are an incredible morning show here in Los Angeles. They're the greatest guys in the world. And they do this show every year. It's called April Foolishness. So that is the 26th. That's April 26th. You can get your tickets at krock.com, and come out and see us and party with us. Then I'll be in Las Vegas on the 27th and 28th at Brad Garrett's Comedy Club. Then next week I'm off to St. Louis. I will be in St. Louis at the Funny Bone, and that is the 2nd, 3rd, 4th, and 5th of May. And then I go straight from St. Louis back to Las Vegas, where I'll be at the Comedy Cellar in the Rio. That is at the Rio Hotel, and I'm there 6th, 7th, 8th, 9th, 10th, 11th, 12th. That's a week of shows. I just do showcases. I'll be around Las Vegas. Then I'm taking a little bit of time off, guys. That's right. I'm going to do one show on the 19th of May. one show at the Comedy Store in Hollywood. This show will sell out. It's going to have really big names on the show, celebrities, and tickets are hard to come by. When I put them up for sale, they are going to sell out really quickly when you see who's on the show. So I want you to know about it first. Maybe I'll get a pre-show or pre-sale code for you guys. But that's May 19th, which is a Sunday night at the Comedy Store, 8 p.m. in the main room. That's the big room, and it will sell out. So get your tickets for that. Then it's off to Las Vegas again. I feel like I live there. June 3rd through 9th. I will be in Las Vegas at the Comedy Cellar. June 13th through 16th, I'll be at the Punchline in Atlanta. Okay. Punchline Atlanta. Then I head off to New York City. I've got a bunch of dates in New York. I think I'm doing this Skank Fest. I'm doing the Empire Casino in Yonkers on the 26th. I'm doing Stone Harbor, New Jersey on the 23rd, maybe. Yeah, that's right. 28th, 29th. I'm going to be in Valley Forge. All these dates are going to be up at eddieif.com. I have to upload those dates. Well, I don't have to upload them, but my web guy does. So check me out. Everything's at eddieif.com. Putting lots of dates on the book. Chicago, I'm coming there. I think that's in July. Am I in Chicago in July? Who knows? I'm in Dallas in July. Yeah, I'm in Chicago, end of July. August, I got all kinds of good stuff. I'll be in Omaha, Nebraska. I'll be in Wilmington, North Carolina. I'll be in Boise, Idaho. I'm going to be in Fort Worth, Texas. September, I'm going to be in San Diego. So, like I said, eddieif.com. I appreciate all the support, everybody coming out to see me. Thank you very much. And thank you to Maya Pucks and Leopard Claw for supporting our show. And this week's sponsors. We got a couple sponsors this week. We got Kettlebell Kitchen, which is feeding me and my family, and it's the best idea ever. And Highleat Clothing, which I believe is now the, in my opinion, the top clothing company in the CrossFit world. If you're not wearing Highleat, you're not doing CrossFit. You're not doing functional fitness. You're not working out. You need to get yourself some Highleat and be elite like me. That's it. So, I think we can get to this episode now. I did that quickly. All right. That was 7 minutes and 38 seconds. Hope you didn't fast forward. Hope you heard it. Go to wadcastpodcast.com. You can click through to get to Thrive Market. Helps out the show. And you can click through, what's the other thing? US Wellness Meats. I have nothing with them other than I just thought they were such good companies that I made myself an affiliate of them. So that if you like my show and you trust me and you think I'm giving you good advice because I am a nerd and research everything, that you can go to those companies and get your food and health products from them. Because if you do, they give me a little kickback. How about that? And that way it doesn't cost anybody anything other than that company. So you and I, no skin off our backs. But guess what? Helps the show. So go check them out. Go through wadcastpodcast.com. Everything's there. Everything you ever need is at wadcastpodcast.com. How about that? And again, I've said it a million times. I'm eventually going to get, when things slow down in May, I'm going to get myself a social media manager. Forgot to take a picture of Gary, but he's going to be at my show. So maybe I'll put that up. Yeah. And just enjoy this episode. Enjoy it. We are on the Wad Cast Podcast right now. How about that? How quick did I just get that started? I set up all the equipment to film and something went wrong. I have just been battling filming for about a year and it hasn't happened. But it doesn't matter because if you're listening to this, that's what you've always done. You've always listened to the show. Welcome to the Wad Cast Podcast, the greatest podcast in all of strength, conditioning, health, fitness, wellness. It's actually the original, pretty much there was CrossFit Radio and then there was our show. The Wad Cast Podcast was the very first podcast about CrossFit. and it's branched off now into I don't know what it does, but we were the first. Just remember that. There's been many after us. There's like I think we spawned many. People would come here and look at us and be our guest and go, "Oh, this is easy. I can do what these guys do." And so they started their own. So there are many, but there's not many guests like our guest today, Gary Reinl, everybody. Probably one of our most downloaded episodes ever.
Oh, I like to hear that. That makes me happy.
And I think it's because if you have not heard his prior episode, go back and listen to it because we get very in-depth into Gary's revolution, I like to call it. Gary's, you're known for kind of stopping icing.
I think that's fair to say, yes.
It's so funny now. Every time I get an injury, I look at it and I'm like, well, that'll make me stop hurting. And then I'm like, no, don't go there. It's the same way I am with cold medicine. When I have a cold, I go, that will stop the symptoms, but it's going to prolong the cold. Do I want to get rid of this thing, or do I just want it to linger forever? I'm just going to fight through this thing. And I usually always opt out of the cold medicine. So I don't think I've taken ibuprofen since I've met you.
Now you're making me even happier.
I've never taken an ibuprofen, a Tylenol, nothing. I remember it upset me one time. I got my wisdom teeth taken out, and the doctor said, here's your antibiotics. We're starting you on a course of antibiotics. And I said, why? And he said, in case you get an infection. And I said, why don't you wait till I get that infection before you start me on that course of antibiotics? And he was like, well, this way it won't ever happen. It'll pretty much prevent it from happening. And I said, but I'd rather not have those antibiotics in me.
Unfortunately, the antibiotics kill all the guys, good and bad.
Yeah, and so I've had some gut problems. So, but how you been, Gary? Good to see you.
It's so good that sometimes I wonder if I shouldn't just have something happen, have someone give me a flat tire so I can have a little less success each day. It's really gone very, very well.
Well, I appreciate you coming up. He came all the way, 6 miles down the road. I'm here in Las Vegas working at Brad Garrett's Comedy Club at the MGM and staying here at the MGM. And Gary came into Casino World, which I know people that live in Vegas never want to come to the Strip. So thank you very much for coming to do this show.
It's been a few years since I've been into the Strip, but I do live in seeing distance, so I can see the whole Strip from my front yard.
You really have not been on the Strip in a couple of years?
No.
Wow. So you live here out in Vegas. You're a big runner yourself. It seems to me I did not realize that, I guess being on the Strip, you just think all it is like fat, dumb Americans wasting their money and drinking slushy drinks filled with alcohol. But there's a huge outdoor community here.
Oh, yeah.
Of like runners and hikers and mountain climbers and bike. I went mountain biking today up near Red Rocks, and it was some of the best mountain biking I've ever done in my life.
Yeah, and if you go out there during the week, you can't find a parking place. And it's a national park, and you can't find a parking place. There are a lot of people in this area that are very fitness-oriented.
Yeah, I had not. Well, even the restaurants I was telling you earlier on the elevator ride up, that I ate at a restaurant called, I think it was called the Protein Palace. And I live in L.A., the most superficial place in the world, and we don't have a restaurant like that. And across the street is Greens and Proteins. And has Vegas become the new look good, feel good place of the country?
Well, I've been a vegan for 45 years.
45
years. And there are at least 4 or 5 places in town that I actually like to go to, because they are vegan restaurants and they do a great job. And I go all over the country, and some of the best places are here in town. In fact, if you go to the Wynn, you know that he is a vegan.
Oh, I didn't know he was.
Oh, yeah. So he's a vegan. So on all the restaurant menus, there are vegan options that are what I say conscious. In other words, the chefs know to not cross the meat products, the dairy products with the vegan products.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, very well done.
So, yeah, because I guess that would be a problem being a vegan, that a lot of times you could say, hey, I want this, but just don't add the meat to it. And then you're like, well, how do they prepare it? Is it touching the meat? And are you a very strict vegan?
Very strict.
Okay, I did not know that.
Very strict. And in fact, I was in an airport in Dallas a few weeks ago, and one of the restaurants there in the airport said they had a veggie burger. Mm-hmm. And I went and thought, okay, this sounds good. I said, I don't eat gluten, I don't eat soy, so can you just give me a burger, a veggie burger on a plate? I'm like, yeah, no problem. So I said, no, one question, is the area controlled? I said, what do you mean? I said, you cook the meat and the vegan on the same griddle. And they said, I don't know, I'll go find out. And they came back and said, no, they're on the same griddle. I said, okay, just so you know, you kind of ruined the whole point. And just forget it. So I finished my water and left the restaurant.
So that's the problem with being on a strict diet. Anyone that's on anything from keto to paleo to vegan, vegetarian, whatever it is, sometimes you can't eat. Luckily, I started fasting and learning all about fasting and going, you know what? It's fine if I don't eat. I'll just wait till like this. Today I stored up on like tons of calories, and it's like it doesn't matter because you come to the Strip and there's nothing healthy around here.
Yeah, and there's Veggie Nation right down the street.
Really on
right down the Strip.
Yeah, I'm
right
not eating there. I had my bison today. I had a party last week, or not a party. I had a couple guys over for dinner last week when we recorded this show, and I went to Erewhon, which is a really nice grocery store in our area that's like, it's mostly vegan. They do have some animal products which are, grass-fed, pasteurized, organic, and it's like so the guys I was having over are big meat eaters. So I got like pounds and pounds of like bison and steaks and sausages and everything. And I go to the counter, and as I'm checking out, I'm handing the girl it's just like meat in plastic. And I look at her, and I just, all of a sudden it dawns on me, this chick's a vegan. There's no, and I said to her, I go, I'm sorry, are you a vegetarian? As she's like putting it through the, zapping it to find out how much it costs. And she looks at me and she goes, no, vegan. And I went, I'm so sorry. She goes, it's okay. I have to do it all day long. And I thought that's probably got to be pretty rough.
Well, you know that red stuff that's kind of accumulated on the bottom of the bag?
The blood.
Yeah, that's blood.
Yeah.
It's not meat juice. That's called blood.
You know who loves that? My dogs.
Yeah, okay. Well, dogs aren't vegan. So.
No. Dogs have this is a terrible story. Dogs have like a taste for blood. And I remember I was dating a girl once, and I guess it was that time of the month, and she had thrown her things out into the and my dogs tore the bathroom apart. And somebody said, oh my God, you never let a dog have a taste for blood. They'll turn into pit bulls. They're going to want to fight everything and kill everything after that. And so I Googled it, and sure enough, it was like that. I have a joke on stage about something like that happening about the dog. I'm not going to do that to the audience, though. But anyway, so how do you run out here? You run like what? How many miles a day? You're a freak of a runner.
I run one long, so I run once a week, 20 or more.
Okay.
And then the other days I do 110, and then I never do less than 4.
Okay.
So kind of just whatever happens, however I feel like that day.
Okay.
But one is going to be long.
So what would you say you average a week? About 40 miles a week?
Probably a little less.
Okay.
Right around the 40 mark.
How do you do that in this heat?
You wear a camel pack, and sometimes you leave the house at 4:30.
Really?
A.M.
You really have to leave that early?
We do, yeah, sometimes.
And do you do trail running or on the roads?
Where you went up the Red Rock, there's a bike path all the way up the hill.
Okay.
So we actually run up the mountain.
You do the same run all the time?
Up and back, yeah.
Oh, I can't do that. I need new runs. I need new trails all the time.
The new trails are in my head, though.
That's crazy.
Really?
I
don't really evaluate.
You just get into your pattern and go with it?
Yeah, sometimes I have to remember to turn around.
So it's kind of cathartic for you. You
it's pretty serious, yeah.
yeah, like meditation almost.
Well, let's put it this way. More than many times, I do not recall the distance from maybe 9 to 16. I don't recall.
I wish I could go there. I remember every step. I'm like, my pinky toe hurt there. I had a cramp right in my abdomen there. I'm trying to run more because I keep telling everybody, and if anyone wants to jump in, I'm going to do an ultra.
Oh.
But I'm not doing it for anything other than to get from the beginning to the end, and I have to break 24 hours. It's 68 miles.
Big run.
Over 16,000 feet of elevation.
That's a big run.
Really?
Yeah, the biggest run I've ever done many, many years ago, I ran from Philadelphia to Ocean City, New Jersey, which is about 72 miles.
I've driven that many times.
I ran that run from Philadelphia down to Ocean City, New Jersey.
How many miles is that?
About 72 something. We've Googled it now because nowadays you can actually get a real count. It's in my book. My book, we actually Googled it and did it. And said,
which
okay,
book is this? The one?
That's ICE, the illusionary treatment option.
Okay.
Yeah.
And that's, what are you running on the Schuylkill Expressway?
Well, we ran down the Black Horse Pike.
You ran down the Black Horse Pike, like on the side of the road.
Wait, it's worse than that. In June.
Oh my God.
In Converse sneaks.
Why?
With no support.
Okay. Converse like Chuck Taylor.
Chuck Taylors.
Okay. I bought a pair of Chuck Taylors yesterday on the way here. I put them on with no socks on to go do a show. I had to walk from here to the MGM, which is probably like a quarter mile. I came back. I had 2 blisters. How did you do that?
Well, I always wore Chuck Taylors, so it wasn't a problem at all.
But they had running shoes back then, Gary. It's not like you.
Not really. I mean,
they didn't have the Nike waffle racers.
No, they weren't there yet because since 1971.
70.
So it's a long time ago, and we actually did it. The guy that ran with me in my book, I actually explained where I thought he was a far superior athlete than me because I prepared for the run. He didn't. I spent several months.
And who was this?
Bobby Shipino.
And who was Bobby?
Bobby was a kid in my high school class.
And he just said, I'll run it with you.
Well, actually, it's kind of interesting to what actually happened.
Nobody had run ultras back then.
No. This was we were in a class all by ourselves. So here's what happens. A couple of my buddies rode their bikes down to the shore.
Okay.
From Philly.
That's understandable.
And they were carrying on about how hard it was and how tired they were. And I said, oh, man, shut up. I could run it. Well, that was about 8 a.m. in Center Hall in school. Mm-hmm. By noon, the story was around the school that I was running.
Oh.
So now I have to go.
That's what I'm doing with this 68-mile run. I'm talking about it so much that I have to do it.
Well, that's what happened here. It was exactly the same thing. I had to do it.
Yeah.
So I prepared. I ran about 5 hours a day and did that for a couple months, almost 7 days a week. I mean, because you just went and did it.
So you were getting up to like 35 miles.
I was running big.
Yeah.
I was running big.
Yeah.
And I was good. I could do it easily. Yeah. Now, back then, no one ever talked about what happens when you run and you sweat.
Yeah.
So I'd get a drink at a drinking fountain at the school and, run for another 2 hours, get another sip of water. No big deal. But when we ran to the shore, we got dropped off. One of our buddies dropped us off. And we got out of the car and that direction. So we started running. We didn't have any water. No food, no supplies. Now, that worked out the first 10 miles, 15 miles.
Yeah.
Even if you drive on that road today, you notice there's about 25-mile stretch where there's nothing.
Yeah.
No stores, just trees.
Yeah.
Okay, well, guess what? We had nothing.
So what'd you do?
That Wawa halfway between, I had a quart of milk. I wasn't a vegan yet. I had a quart of milk and a pack of Tasty Cake Crumpets.
Tasty Cakes. I was going to say, did you get a Tasty?
That was it. Well, I'm a junior in high school. What do I know?
They didn't make the cheesesteaks at Wawa.
No, they don't.
Best cheesesteak, and it's unbelievable how Wawa makes a great cheesesteak.
Well, no cheesesteaks here. Just a quart of milk and a pack of vanilla crimpets. I guess they're called vanilla, but crimpets, the long ones.
Milk. I can't.
Oh yeah. Oh no, I don't understand.
I can't think of anything worse.
No, there was nothing worse. However, we had no water. We had nothing.
No water.
With no Camelbacks, no bottles of water weren't here yet. I wonder sometimes why we didn't die.
Yeah.
Off the side of the road, the temperature had to be approaching 100.
Oh my God.
Because it was June.
What do you think you were averaging minute mile pace?
Oh, horrible.
What do you think?
We got out around the 20 minute mark.
Okay.
I mean, it was horrible.
Yeah, but that's people don't realize when they hear 20-minute mile, you're still running because you're stopping, you're taking pee breaks, you're walking up some big hills. It
was a nasty game.
Yeah.
We got to the turnoff, and we had never taken the road before. It's called Indian something or another. And a guy had suggested to us that we got water from a guy's front yard. And we told him what we were doing. He said,
you went to Ocean City. You didn't stop at Atlantic City. You kept going.
Wait till to Ocean City. Atlantic City would have been closer. I wish we had done that. Yeah. We were to Ocean City.
Right.
And a guy, we got water out of his front yard. And remember, there was like 25 miles. There was no water.
Out of a hose. Out of a garden hose.
Out of a garden hose in a guy's front yard. And he said, look, turn on that next street called Indian something or another. I don't remember what it was called, but whatever it's called. And go down that, and then you'll see a sign for Ocean City, and it's going to save you some time. At this point, we had said we're going to run from Philly to Ocean City.
You didn't say how.
I didn't say I was going to take no shortcuts. Well, if that was a shortcut, it was the worst mistake of our life.
Oh, no.
There was nothing on the street for hours, and it's dark.
And you had no support, like no friend was driving up behind you.
Nope.
You just had to get there.
Nope, but it was on, back in those days, there was a radio station called WFIL. Mm-hmm. And one of our buddies called into him and said we were doing it. So they announced it on the radio.
Oh, wow.
That these two guys from Lansdowne Olden High School are running from Philly to Ocean City today. If you see them on the Black Horse Pike, blow your horn. Well, the horn would blow. People would wave, and they'd go by. Nobody stopped and said, hey, you guys need water? Anything to eat? We had nothing.
See, I'm fascinated with people like this that go out and say, I'm going to do this, and then they accomplish stuff like this. I don't know why. I think it's funny when I had a guy on my other podcast skateboard across the United States.
Okay, that's pretty hard.
Longboard. And he did it. He said harder was going from San Francisco. He did San Francisco to San Diego. Oh. And he just talked about how many pairs of shoes he wore out. It was a lot of skateboarding. I think they sat down going down hills a lot. They took longboard skateboards and went across the entire United States of America. That's
a lot harder than what I did.
No, I mean, it's weird. No matter what you do, it's all relative. It's always hard. And I find I haven't accomplished many things like this at all. Anything, other than I've run some marathons. But, if somebody said to me, what was harder, the New York City Marathon or the Las Vegas Marathon? It's I don't know. They both suck. When you're in pain, you're in pain. Yeah. Pain is pain, and people go, it's the most pain I've ever felt. Was it really? Or, at that moment, was it? Because it's hard to compare pain But I do have a fascination with people that accomplish this. A good friend of mine did Race Across America.
That's a big one.
He did the 4-man team and the 8-man team. This is a guy I grew up with. He just put a picture out of himself as this big, fat, blubbery turd. And one day he just decided, I'm done drinking. I'm done eating shitty food. And I'm getting in shape. And he did Ram twice. And I think his teams won both years. He did 7 marathons in 7 days on 7 continents.
That's brutal. That's what I did was nothing.
Yeah, everything had to work out for that one.
Yeah, that's really hard.
There was one where they had to. It was all about their flight not being delayed. I think it was the one South America to Europe or something. If it was delayed, it throws off the whole thing and you can't do it. But you start in Antarctica or something. I think. Maybe they started in the United States, Miami. I forget what his order was. I'm going to have him on the show someday. But it requires they get a jet and they, the whole they charter it, all the people that are doing it, so that the jet's waiting for you.
I love it.
And they get to the airport, and that's where all your recovery is. On this jet, flying from one country to your sleep, your recovery, everything. So, talk about putting yourself, because all of these things, these accomplishments, I think are great, but a lot of times there's recovery involved. There's no recovery when you're sleeping sitting up on an airplane. I don't know how he did it.
Well, I understand how hard that is. I'm not willing to try it.
When you did 73 miles though from Philadelphia to Ocean City, had you been aware of anybody else ever running that far at that time?
No, I was just responding to the guys who were bragging and complaining about riding bikes. And that was it.
So looking back in history, have you found out there were other guys that had run ultras that claimed to be the originators of the ultra?
Well, I'm sure there are. I've never heard of anybody, but I never looked either. When I did it, I was the only person that I knew that ever did it. And
because back then, even a marathon was far.
Yeah. No, I mean, I was doing a marathon a day. I mean, it was I was running 4 or 5 hours a day every day.
Well, so you guys were running in the dark a lot.
We started out in the dark in the morning and then ran all through the heat during the day. And it was dark by the time we got to Ocean City.
Would you rather have done it the other way? Run through the day and then all night? No,
because in an odd way, those people blowing horns at us
helped you.
Helped because every time because it happened often. We're from Philly, and two guys from Philly are running to Ocean City along the Black Horse Pike, and almost everybody went that way because on Atlantic City Expressway you had to pay a toll.
Yeah.
So we were all kids, and we weren't going to pay no toll when you could drive for free.
Right.
So lots of people passed us, and when people passed, they'd blow their horn, they'd yell stuff out. Not everybody was nice.
And you were a high school runner at the time?
No.
No?
Oh no. No, just respond to the foolishness of my buddies that rode their bike. That's all.
Oh my God. So did you start running after that? I guess that gave you a sense of I can do anything.
Well, the following year, my senior year, I competed in the Marine Corps Physical Fitness Championships. So that was a shorter distance. So I didn't really run long then. I was only running 4s and 5s back then.
Right.
Through my senior year. And then when I got out of high school, I only had a year blank before I opened my gym. I opened the 7th novelist gym in the world in 1973. And that was pretty much lifting weights and being big and strong.
Right.
So I became kind of that. And then after a few years, I got bored with that and started running long again. So by about 22 or 23, I was back running long distance.
Yeah.
And immediately, like first time out, ran 20. How far are you running? I've been running 3s and 4s. Well, how far you want to go there? Oh, let's go down the other end back and see what happens. And then remember, back then, there was no water. There was no electrolytes.
I was just talking about that with somebody about how when we played football as kids, you would say, I need water. And the coach would be like, don't be a pussy.
Yeah. Yeah, I remember that.
And now it's like, hold on. Is there an electrolyte replacement in that?
Yeah.
Is it the perfect temperature? What time?
They give us salt tablets.
Yeah.
They took salt tablets and practically could kill you what they were doing to us. No water. Here, take 3 salt tablets.
I don't know if I'm saying it right. I think is it hypnotremia? Hypnotremia, when you pee out all your salt. I
haven't heard of that.
Yeah, you take in too much water and you flush out all the salt of your body, all the sodium. When I ran my first marathon, I knew that I had drank too much water. I was all about like, I gotta hydrate, and I was being an idiot. And it's like, why don't I just do what I normally do all the time? So I drank an excessive amount of water. Then the day of the race, before the race started, I just kept peeing. And I was like, oh no, I know I probably have just peed out all the sodium in my body. So I went to a coffee stand, and there was this big, fat black woman running the coffee stand. And I said, ma'am, could I get, and she was serving coffee. I said, could I get some salt? She goes, who drinks salt in their coffee? And I remember like, get out of here. And I was like, no, you don't understand. All I wanted to do was just take, put a bunch of salt in me. That I was like, this is going to help me down the road. I know I need this salt. Sure enough, I hit a wall. Because I was just, had nothing in me.
So have you peed myoglobin yet? Where you pee and it's red?
No, God, no.
Oh, yeah. Here, I volunteered a couple times I did that.
What is that?
It's basically where you crush the muscles to the point that...
So that's when you get, what do we call
Rhabdo.
Rhabdo, yeah. Okay. So I've never had rhabdo. I don't ever want to have rhabdo.
It's interesting when you look down and you see red coming out of that faucet because that's not something you expect to see.
I think Armin had it in the OC Throwdown. I think there was a race where he had to carry a sandbag around a track a number of times, and I think he got it during that.
Yeah, I did it a couple of times. First time scared me.
You just got it from running?
Well, from running hard.
Really?
Yeah.
I didn't know you could get it from running.
Oh yeah, I'm sure.
I think I heard David Goggins talk about it too, that he had rhabdo and he just like shot himself, and he was like during his first ultra. And I
just met him a few weeks ago.
Oh, you did?
Great guy, really a nice guy. He was inducted into the International Sports Hall of Fame.
Where was that?
Columbus, Ohio.
Okay.
I was there for the induction. I wasn't one of the people he was.
Okay.
But very nice. Just remarkable.
Yeah,
person.
He is fascinating. What a masochist, though. I mean, things he's put himself through.
Yeah, and the way he talks about it, it's like, when he ran that first 100-mile run was...
Yeah.
And that's not how you... Okay. I prepared.
He just went out and did
He was a little bit like my buddy Bobby Shipano. When I said, Bobby, you going to practice for this run? He's like, oh, no, I play baseball, football, and basketball. I'm good. And Bobby was a 3 varsity letter guy, so he was an athlete.
Yeah, yeah.
But like I said in my book, and I started to say a little bit ago, I was impressed far more with Bobby than I was with me.
Right.
Because I prepared.
Yeah.
He made it.
Yeah.
Now, I drug him a little bit, but he made it.
Yeah.
Without preparation.
Yeah.
That's incredible.
I'm just going to interrupt for another second. I'm sorry when I interrupt. This is the only way I can talk to you guys about the importance of looking so studly or so hot, ladies. Yeah, that's right. I'm going to differentiate. The men look studly. The women look hot. Don't get mad at me. Don't tell me about this gender equality or anything like that, or neutrality. Whatever it is, you want to look good? I don't care if you're a man, a woman, a goat. I don't care who you are. You want to look good? Get yourself some Hylete. You're like, what's Hylete? I haven't seen that in the stores. That's right, you haven't seen it in the stores, because they're smarter than those people that buy those retail locations. Why pay for all those locations when you can sell direct through the internet like Hylete does? These guys build the best premium athletic apparel. They've got backpacks. Their backpacks are incredible. And they have shoes. They have shoes. We all know you're CrossFitters. You love your shoes. You try all the different kinds. You find out which one. But this one's going to save you because you get one shoe for all your needs, from doing high intensity interval training to any kind of weightlifting. You want to go for a run. This is what you need. Check out Hylete. You're not going to pay all the money. You're going to look better. You're going to look better than anyone out there. Trust me, I'm wearing this stuff because I know I look good in it. And so I go for Hylete, and you're not going to pay the prices that you pay for those other brands. You know who I'm talking about. So they focus on selling directly to the community. So they know these guys are CrossFitters. They know our community. They know everything about it. And so this stuff is like a niche product. Get yourself some Hylete. And they've got 7 styles of shorts. So you're not just going to get stuck with one kind. They got 7 different kinds. How about that? I know my favorite. I don't know the name of it. I should take a picture of myself wearing them because I wear them all the time now. And they're women's products. I wear their women's products all the time. Their tights. The Nimbus tight collection. I wear that when late at night when the lights go down, the tights go on, and I prance through the neighborhood. No, ladies, you will love these. My wife, especially now that she's pregnant, I'm feeling like it's her everyday outfit. That's right. Check them out. If you're going to work out, you want to be in Hylete. And exclusive to Wadcast listeners, we're going to give you 20% off your next order. How about that? Hylete.com. You order with the code WAD20. That's WAD20 at Hylete.com. And you're going to get 20% off. How about that? You create a Hylete.com. You go to Hylete.com and you're going to apply the code to the account, and this is going to exclude clearance and pre-order. You'll also receive a 20% off Hylete pricing on your first purchase at Hylete.com. How's that good? How's that go? That's amazing. That is amazing. So create a profile on there, Hylete.com. You're going to get 20% off, WAD20, and do it now. Thank me later, okay? You don't even need to thank me. I know. I'm amazing at doing this for you. I got to get back to the episode, though. So go to highleet.com, get yourself 20% off, put in WAD20. That's WAD20. Highleet.com, HYLETE. I need to talk to you about one of my new favorite things in the whole world, and that is Kettlebell Kitchen. Kettlebell Kitchen is keeping me full of good nutrition, and it tastes delicious. It's unbelievable. You've heard of all these like meal-based companies that basically send you meals to your home, you cook them, or they're cooked for you, whatever. There's nothing better if you're a CrossFitter, if you're into functional fitness, if you're a workout freak. This is what you want to do. Kettlebell Kitchen is a goal-based meal delivery system, and they believe in fueling the body with high-quality, nutrient-dense foods. You've heard Dylan talk about it. Dylan, my nutritionist friend, all the time. You can talk paleo, you can talk keto, you can talk vegan, whatever you want to talk about. Nutrients are what's important. And these are nutrient-dense foods, and they're going to help you perform. And so we all know how important nutrition is. So look no further. So if you're looking to lose weight, you want to build muscle, you want to just crush PRs, Kettlebell Kitchen's here to make that happen, because the meals are designed by nutritionists, prepared by chefs, and they're conveniently delivered so you can spend more time at the gym, less time in the kitchen. Head over to kettlebellkitchen.com right now. Use the code WADCAST. You're going to get $25 off for your first 2 orders of $50 or more. Did you hear me just say that? You're going to get $25 off your first 2 orders of $50 or more at kettlebellkitchen.com if you put in WADcast. And you're going to go there and you're going to notice that this website completely caters to you and your needs. So get there right now. Try out all their delicious foods. They'll, if you want, they can email you every week and let you know what's up, what's on the menu. It's great for me. There's nothing more perfect. My wife and I are so busy right now. My wife's pregnant. We got another kid, we have one on the way. We've got 1 kid. We both have careers. I'm traveling all the time. And I'm not saying I'm any different than any of you. I know you all have busy schedules, and that's why I'm saying do what we do and get yourself some Kettlebell Kitchen. Go to kettlebellkitchen.com. Did you hear me? kettlebellkitchen.com. What a cool name. And use WADCAST, one word, WADCAST, WODCAST, to get $25 off your first 2 orders of $50 or more. And if you have kids, get the paleo chicken nuggets. Okay, you don't even need kids. I eat them all the time. So try them out. Now let's get back to the show. I had a friend do that. I did a triathlon once, and I brought a friend with me, and I said, and he, swam a few times and ran a few times, but he didn't train. I trained. And I don't know why. I might have had the flu or something, but I got out of the water, and I was ahead of him, but I knew I was sick. And I was like, I'm not going to, I don't know what's going to happen. I don't know if I can finish this race. And so I turned around. I saw him getting out of the water, and I thought, he's just going to do this slow. I'll do it with him. So I go, Chris, come on, catch up to me. Let's do this together. I'm not going to go and try to get a good time. I'm just going to hang with you and finish the race. So we got on our bikes, and the start of the bike was a hill, and I'm cranking up the hill, and my foot comes out of the clipless pedal, or the clip pedal, and I go to put it back in, and I'm just having trouble getting it back in, and I'm on a hill, so it's hard on the hill to get back in, and he just takes off and just crushed the course. Just crushed it. And I was like, he's like, hey, I did okay, huh? I beat you. And I'm like, well, you were supposed to go with me. And he's like, you were so slow. I couldn't
Don't you hate that?
It was awful. So I am fascinated by anyone that can accomplish it. I think everybody has it in them. It's just to see how far you can push yourself.
And what do you want to do? It's I had a goal to run 50,000 miles. So once I ran 50,000 miles, I stopped keeping track.
So you've done 50,000.
I've done, I'm considerably over 50 now, but I had a goal. So I kept logs, and once I got to 50,000, I was like, okay, well, no more records, because that's what I wanted to do.
Well, now what are you at? What do you think you're at?
I honestly haven't checked, but I got to be approaching 60, but I'll just say over 50 because I don't want to exaggerate.
You don't want to go for 100? How long did it take you to get 50,000?
Well, the way I counted it, about 50 years.
Okay.
So about 50 years it took me.
Okay.
And how I ran, there was way more than that because I didn't keep full records in the beginning. So I never allowed myself more than 1,000 miles a year back then. And I was running 70 miles a week for over 5 years. So just that alone would have, I mean, it sets off any place where you may have been low.
I like that you can go into that headspace of running. For me, it used to be kind of, not spiritual, but I would go into this place of like, I like this push. And then I started doing CrossFit, and CrossFit was start, stop, start, stop, start, stop. And I think I ingrained a pattern in myself of going back to my sprinting days of, sprint a lap, walk around a lap, sprint a lap. And so CrossFit, I started kind of taking that in of like, if I was going too hard, pull back, take a few seconds break, then push again. We're running. You can't stop. You're running. You're going. Yeah. And it's a completely different kind of conditioning of go, 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 just keep pushing. Yeah,
actually,
so I've put it back in.
If anybody asks me, and every once in a while people ask me, I don't talk much about my running, but because it's kind of like my world, and I play in my world. And people say to me, well, I don't know how you do it. I can't run 4 miles. I'm miserable. And I said, just so you know, I'm miserable the first 10 miles. I mean, you understand? It doesn't get happy until past 10.
I didn't know it gets happy there.
Oh, yeah. Everything changes where it's like you don't even remember you're doing it.
Yeah, I think when I've run marathons, the first half is, you're cooking, and then the second half is like all blur.
Yeah.
It's just a giant blur.
You breathe. I'm a 2 to 1, so I'm
on your foot pattern.
That's how I do it.
Okay.
I'm 2 and then I'm 1. And that's how I breathe the whole way. And I'm so lost in my breath because I'm counting my breaths. I'm not counting anything else.
It's hard for me to go numb like that, and just the only way I can do that is surfing. Sometimes when I'm surfing,
yeah, well, it's the same thing.
Yeah,
that's the same thing.
I'm just sitting in the ocean though, just looking at waves. I'm not pushing my body.
Yeah, but it's the same thing.
Yeah.
It's getting into the space where actually it's no different than when you're writing a script, when you're writing a routine, or when I'm writing a book, or it's all the same. Mm-hmm. Your wife comes out to you at 4 a.m. and says, "Did you go to bed yet?" And you go, "Oh, no. What time is it?" Well, it's 4. And you're like, "Oh,
I'm in this."
I didn't even know. I had no idea it's 4 o'clock in the morning.
You get lost in what you love. It's just.
And running's the same way. It's the
I don't
same
know
thing.
though, because running's pain.
You got to get rid of that idea.
And I still do it. I've been running a lot. I've said I've made all these goals, so I'm trying to put some miles in, and I took many years off. CrossFit kind of said, there was a lot of this, why do you need to run? Like, do sprints. That's all you need to do. And I feel like I lost a lot by not doing those long runs anymore. So I'm just trying to incorporate.
Well, the interval training is really good.
Yeah.
So given a choice, if you said to me, which one is
better for you?
I think the interval training is better.
Yeah, I would agree.
But not for my head.
Yeah.
now I have a 32-year-old son who a few years ago ran the Death Valley Marathon.
Oh, Jesus.
Took 5th place in it. And good runner. Good, clean runner. Well, his daughter, my granddaughter, is 7. The other day, she just ran her first 10-mile run.
What?
Oh, yeah. 7 years old, just ran her first 10-mile run. And she is slated to do her first half marathon in 2 weeks. And you go, how's that possible? What do you think happened? You got the same body I got. Same body my son has. It's the same thing.
It's the genetics.
It's just there.
Yeah.
So we've got a 7-year-old. This is really a crazy story.
That's crazy.
No, wait, this is crazier. She runs a local race, and it's a 10K, so 6.2. And it's mostly locals, and it's mostly older people. It's not many kids.
Right.
Kids that didn't show up to the race. So she's in the 18 and under, or 19 and under female group, okay? And she runs it. This is like 3 months ago. And she runs the race, and I'm kind of looking and I'm thinking, there weren't many people that size up front where she was. I wonder what the rules are for what, what's the age categories. So I went to the race director and said, hey, just curious, what's the categories? Because there's 60 and older, there's 40 to 50, whatever. And she said, well, 19 and under. And I went, oh, well, okay, that's probably not going to happen. And she said, but just so you know, Elu's going to podium. And I went, what? She said, well, right now she's in first, but we think there's one person to beat her. The kid podiumed at 7, 19 and under females.
That's insane.
So the race director calls out her name. And we're pushing her to go up on stage. And she's like, no, what's wrong? I didn't do anything wrong. Mm-hmm. We're like, no, you got to go up on stage. You won. Well, she didn't know what a podium was.
Yeah.
So here she is standing on the podium with this 18-year-old woman and the 7-year-old girl and the race director. The whole crowd is going crazy.
How fast did she run it?
I don't know. 15s. Oh. I mean, I know she's a 15er. I know she's a 15-minute miler.
Wow.
Or less. She's 15 or less.
Right.
She's a good runner.
Yeah.
But just think, you podiumed second place.
At 7.
In the 19 and under.
I just looked up. My daughter's quick. She's fast. She has what I have, which is fast twitch muscle fiber. She's probably doesn't have endurance, just can, she loves to run. She loves to sprint. And I set up chalk outside in the street, the start and the finish, and I make her run sprints, and she pumps her arms well. She's got her toes straight now, perfect position of her head, everything. Like, she's running good form. She knows a start. And I timed her in her 50 just to see how fast she was, because I'm like, I think she's fast. And then I looked, and they have a little Roadrunners thing, track club down at Calabasas High. And I looked at the times, and I said, I think my daughter can go down there and beat everyone. But I don't want to push her, to do things she doesn't want to do at this point. Like, I don't want to Chinese mother her, the whole Chinese mother thing. I want her to enjoy things and find her passions and then do them and make her do them because they're her passion. I don't want it because I was fat. Hey, come on, get your spikes. Let's go. Dad's going to make you, hey, get at the starting line right now. I don't want to do that. And I think at her age, at 4 years old, to put her into that, she might be like, what are you doing to me, Dad? And I'm like, just start here and run to the other end. You're going to see. You're going to beat everybody. And it's also Dad's ego. I can just go, my kid kicked all your kids' asses. But a little bit of it is just inquisitive. I'm curious because I think look, she does love to run, but I think she's got a genetic, tendency to be able to run fast. And I'm just curious, but I guess I'm going to have to wait a few more years.
There's more to it, too.
Yeah.
Well, one of my good friends that I've had for many, many years, kind of whenever you say something to him, he always talks back in a parable to you. He never actually answers a question. Mm-hmm. So now what do you?
Yeah. Well, I have a friend like that. I call him Alex Trebek because he always asks questions.
Yes.
Everything I say is in question, right?
This guy went to see one of those, I don't know, in India, a monk or whatever they're called. I don't know what they're called. Right. But they're advisors.
Yeah.
This particular guy, this guy doesn't answer questions. He writes on the chalkboard.
Yeah.
So anybody that knows that kind of stuff would know who it was he went to. And him and his wife are standing in line. They want to get the perfect question. You're in line for an hour to ask this guy a question. He writes on a chalkboard the answer. And so they decide they were going to ask, what's the best thing we can do? What advice can you give us about raising our children? Mm. And he wrote on the board, babies copy. That was his answer.
Interesting.
Okay, that really is the answer, by the way.
Yeah.
Babies copy.
Uh-huh.
So don't be surprised that my granddaughter runs or your daughter runs.
Yeah.
Or if you smoke cigarettes, don't be surprised that she smokes cigarettes.
Right. My neighbor said it best to me. She said, kids don't do what you say, they do what you do. And we were talking about trying to keep kids off cell phones and off screens and not eating sugar. And she said, I said, I just don't want her watch. She wants to, be on that phone and on that screen. She goes, well, how often are you on it? Mm-hmm. And I was like, wow, you got me. She said she's just mirroring what you're doing.
So do you remember Zig Ziglar, the trainer?
Yeah.
Okay. I did Zig's train-the-trainer course.
Okay.
He was my instructor many years ago.
He was a motivational speaker way back in the day.
Back in the early 80s. He was my instructor. And Zig used to say...
My dad used to give me his tapes when I was a kid.
That's right. I remember all those tapes.
Yeah.
I actually took his course. Zig was my teacher. It was very cool. His train-the-trainer course. And Zig said, children more attention pay to what you do than what you say. Now, that right there, if I forget that someday, then I know I'm in trouble because that is in my brain. I can see Zig saying it.
Yeah.
And you go, oh, really? Well, that's baby's copy.
Yeah.
It's what your friend told you. It's all the same thing.
Yep.
So don't be surprised that she runs.
Yeah.
And then, by the way, that she finds joy in it.
Yeah.
Because you find joy in it.
Yeah.
And if you hated it, guess what she's going to hate?
Right.
You're not going to do it because you're never going to put the right vibe
but we're split. My wife, I like to surf and run and mountain bike and ski and do all this stuff. And my wife likes to go shopping. And so I'm watching my daughter be like split down the middle. And I'm like, Izzy, you want to go surfing with Daddy? She's like, I'm going to Target with Mom. And I'm like, you're going to Target? What do you want to get at Target? Like, how is that fun? And she's like, I'm just going to go with Mama. And I'm like, no, I'm paddling out. The waves are perfect. So that is my battle that I have. So I read your fight that you got into the other day. We got into it so much in the last show, and everybody, if you listen to the last episode with Gary, you'll realize Gary's whole theory, which I guess has been taken on by many trainers around the world now, and it's so funny when I hear it. When I hear someone now that is so often I read, ice this, ice that, and I see it in literature, and I'm like, oh God, this is so old. And I've heard Chris Kresser complain that it's one of the problems with medical school is that they're using 25-year-old textbooks, and so they're teaching. And if you start off on a path with something wrong, how are you going to get back to right when from the beginning you took the wrong turn?
That's correct.
And we're doing that so much in medicine because these textbooks are so old that doctors, even doctors I've gone to where I don't know anything, and I don't like to be that guy that thinks he knows more than the doctor, but I'll say something to the doctor and she'll go, you're wrong. And I'll go, oh, well, I just thought, and she'll go, no, you're wrong. And then I'll call another doctor friend and they're like, no, you were right. And she's an idiot, or he's an idiot, or whoever it was. And I'm like, well, who do I trust at this point? It's a very difficult thing. So I see a lot in literature. I just read something today where it said, oh, ice it, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, oh, God.
Well, here's what I can tell you. The talks that I give, I'm invited to schools now. In fact, just last week I was at a athletic trainers meeting down where was I? In Scottsdale. Mm-hmm. And a group of 5 or 6 athletic training students came up to my booth, all excited. And I was like, it's kind of interesting how they're kind of like fussing, waiting for me to finish with the last person to talk to them. And I get done and I say, hi, how you doing? And they go, can we get a picture with you? And I'm like, sure. So we want to show our professor. He made us listen to your video.
Oh, wow. That's great.
And I was like, well, sure. I said, hey, do me a favor. When you show your professor, ask him to email me. Because I want to hear from the professor that had enough insight, had enough willingness to accept information that he had you listen to my video. So, yeah, it's changing. And I ask at the beginning of my lectures now a very simple question. I ask you and your audience this question. It starts off by saying, you want to clear the space. So you say, how many people here either use the RICE protocol, the rest, ice, compression, elevation? How many people either use the RICE protocol or know someone that does? Well, that's going to be 100% of the room. Mm-hmm. You're going to get 100%. Mm-hmm. So then I say, okay, so let me just ask you a question just so I understand something. Now be careful. It's a yes or no answer. It's not a trick. and you can answer too if you would. If you would, it would help me if you'd answer. Do you think trapping the waste in and around the damaged site and preventing the natural flow of oxygen and supplies is a good idea? That's a yes or no answer. What do you think?
No.
Okay. I've asked thousands of people. No one's ever said yes. Yet, in fact, that is precisely what the Rice Protocol does. It traps the waste in and around the damaged site and prevents the natural flow of oxygen supplies. And on top of that, it kills muscle cells, stem cells, skin cells, and nerve cells.
I was in Arizona, Scottsdale, funny enough, and I went for a hike one day. I was doing shows down there. Went for a hike and I fell and hit a rock, like hit my knee, like my patella. And I knew I kept running down the hill and I was in a lot of pain, but I kept running down the hill and I was like, this is going to swell up as soon as I stop moving. And I didn't have a Myopux with me to hook up and it hurt. And I was like, I'm not putting ice on it. So I got back to my hotel and I just lay in bed and I just kept moving my leg.
That's right.
I just kept like, I didn't want to, like, I knew it hurt, right there, but I just kept moving my leg back, almost like a bicycle move or like a squat, back and forth. And I just kept moving it. And I would do like sets of like 100 and then, walk around or do whatever and then do it again. And as soon as I woke up in the morning, did it again and no swelling. I got over the injury pretty quickly. And I was like, wow, that's the first time I've ever, usually I'll have a Myopux with me where I can hook it up and let it do the work for me, but I didn't have it. So I was like, I got to keep moving before this thing swells up and I'm just going to make this worse.
Well, the human body is designed to self-repair, not self-destruct.
Yeah.
You don't have too much inflammation. You have too little evacuation. So if anyone missed that just now, listen again. There's not too much inflammation. There's too little evacuation. So you've got this recovery system that's in your body, your innate intelligence. You get hurt. Fluid comes to the area. Now, do you really think it's the wrong amount of fluid? I mean, think about that. Do you actually believe that something as important as preserving and regenerating tissue would be done wrong by your immune system? And by the way, every time. Well, it doesn't make any sense at all that it would be wrong. The damaged vessels constrict. The healthy vessels dilate and increase perfusion. In other words, increase the flow in. Now, if you say to yourself, well, I want to stop that. Well, let's just say that you were foolish enough to believe you should stop it. And by the way, you'd be foolish. I no longer have compassion. I don't hold back anymore. And if reading that paper that I sent to you, you're clear that I don't hold back anymore. If you believe that there was too much fluid sent to the site, in other words, that there's too much inflammation, and that's the problem. How much too much? 3%, 9%, 47%, 82%? Right feet different than left feet, you different than me? You see the problem? You got this question where you're saying, well, I think there's too much inflammation, so too much fluid coming to the area, which are two different words, but the public has confused those two. So you're saying, I'm going to limit how much is going to get there. But you don't have any idea whether there's too much or not. Maybe there's not enough. Or maybe there's 7% too much. How do you measure that? How do you figure it out? How do all these smart trainers that tell everybody to do something, you want to do this and stop that inflammation? Well, no, actually, you don't want to stop the inflammation. Inflammation is phase 1 of 3 phases of healing. Inflammation, repair, remodel. This is not a contest. It's not a debate. There's 3 steps. Inflammation, repair, remodel. Inflammation sets off a recovery cascade. That cascade includes bringing fluid supplies to the area. So you're mobilizing repair and cleanup crew to come to the site to solve the problem, package the waste for evacuation via your passive lymphatic system. So let's just get this straight. There is no way in the world you could possibly know how much too much is. Nor could you tell if there was too much. Nor could you tell whether you had the right amount and I didn't, or someone else did and he didn't. There's no way of knowing this.
Okay, so we mentioned that, or we talked all about this on the last show, and I've been thinking about this. When it comes to inflammation, though, there are people that have more inflammation than other people because of things like eating a bad diet with high in omega-6 fatty acids or high sugar content. So they might have, they might just be full of inflammation. So they need to evacuate that more than anyone, correct?
When you have a musculoskeletal injury, that's what we're talking about here. We're not talking about cardiac disease or anything.
Right.
We're talking about musculoskeletal injuries. A recovery cascade is put in motion the instant you are hurt. That recovery cascade includes an inflammatory response, which is bringing in the repair and cleanup crew, packaging the waste for evacuation and evacuating it. That's all that. We're not talking about cardiac disease.
Right.
We're talking about musculoskeletal trauma.
But so that inflammation, that's what I'm asking.
It's very specific to the damaged tissue.
So we all have the same amount of inflammation when it comes to that?
I would imagine some people are more efficient than others.
Okay.
But to say that you're going to regulate it by putting ice on it.
Right.
It's like, well, first of all, do you understand when the tissue rewarms, the inflammatory response resumes? You did nothing but delayed it. Right. Well, actually, you did more than that, because by putting the ice on, you actually caused more swelling in the area because you cause a backflow from lymphatic vessels into that interstitial space. You actually kill muscle cells, nerve cells, and skin cells. It's called frostbite, for anybody who doesn't believe me about that. You Google it, and you can see real quick that you don't have to put ice over top of a superficial nerve. Why? Because it kills the nerve cells. We know it kills muscle cells, and the stem cells that reside in the area, you're probably killing them too. Now, I don't have proof of that, but I can pretty much figure out that everything else dies in the area from the extreme cold. A high probability the stem cells in the area are also getting destroyed. So you go, well, why would you do that? Because you want to delay it? Your goal is to delay the inflammatory response? Well, that's what they think they're doing. But they think they're stopping it. They think they're regulating it to the positive. Then they do things like take a bandage and wrap around it real tight to prevent the swelling. Mm-hmm. Okay, now think that through for a second. And anybody out there is willing to do this, take your right hand, put it over your left wrist, and squeeze it. Now squeeze it and only squeeze the in vessels. Do not compress the out vessels. How would you do that?
I don't know how.
Okay, well, you can't. So the answer is you can't. So when you squeeze...
I was like, I didn't know I have in and out vessels.
Well, of course there's in and out. There has to be in and out.
I mean, I was like, I don't know which one's which.
Of course you don't. Neither does anybody else. And when you put a bandage around it and you wrap it tightly, you're preventing the fluid from getting in. But by the way, the fluid's supposed to be there. Your immune system has dilated to help the surrounding vessels. So the repair's
never happening.
Well, you're delaying everything until you take the bandage off.
Yeah.
So I have reports. I have a paper called Procrastination, a Fundamental Flaw in Injury Management. In that paper, my co-author is the editor-in-chief of the Physician and Sports Medicine Journal. Very ultra-conservative, right down the center of the road orthopedic surgeon. Very well known. He's the medical director for the American Council on Exercise. He's a senior VP in the American Academy of Anti-Aging. He's got a resume that's as long as you want to go read about if you want to look him up. So you look at the paper and you say, well, you guys are saying you cut recovery time in half? Yes, we cut recovery time in half many, many thousands of times because we don't delay it anymore.
So you think that's what it is, about a half?
No, I think it's better.
Really?
I think what takes you 4 weeks, I can do in a week and a half.
Yeah, I was going to say about it. I think with all the different methods of rehab and doing things to myself, that I've cut it down from, as something that would take an injury that would take 6 weeks is down to 2 weeks.
Yeah.
Easy.
That's pretty normal.
Yeah.
And so here's what's wrong. It isn't that doing this speeds it up. It's that doing the other thing slows it down. Yeah. So I'm sometimes asked, especially by the students when I'm talking at a school, they'll say, well, is it a good idea to speed it up? Doesn't it take a certain amount of time? And I say, yeah, I don't speed it up. I just remove the obstacles. Okay,
so
normalize the rate of recovery.
Let's go off on a little tangent, and maybe you can hypothesize if you don't know the answer for this. But take something like DOMS. DOMS, people think it's micro tearing of your muscles and the delayed onset muscle soreness. That has to happen, right? You need that inflammatory process to happen. The muscles, the blood goes there. Then are you saying the same thing? You're going to evacuate the waste?
Of course.
Okay, so do you think you can cut down your DOMS time?
Of course you can.
Really?
No, worse. You can make it take longer than it should.
Okay.
So let's just think it through now. Let's ask the big question again. Do you think it's a good idea to trap the waste in and around the damaged site and prevent the natural flow of oxygen supplies? Nope. Okay, well then why would you do anything that does that? Right. You should only be doing things that does the opposite. How do you decongest the area? Because when you look at tissue preservation and regeneration, which is the only thing anybody should be looking at who has any kind of authority whatsoever in managing people. So if your job is to manage an athlete, you're a doctor, a therapist, a trainer, whatever you are, your job, your responsibility is to preserve and regenerate tissue. Don't make anything get damaged that doesn't need to be damaged, and get back what you lost as quick as you can.
Okay, so take something like, say somebody has a bulging disc, which is going to need more than just the body's not going to repair it as much as, you're going to need to stop having compression on that spine or something. So you're not necessarily going to repair it with the inflammatory process happening and the waste leaving. So what do you do in a situation like that?
Well, there are times that you're going to need intervention.
Right.
Okay, and that's fine. But no matter what, trapping the waste in and around the damaged site and preventing the natural flow of oxygen supplies is not going to solve the problem.
Right.
So anything that does that, don't do. And anything that does the opposite, try to do. But I have a simple rule. Use your brain, never cause pain. So whatever you're doing to facilitate the movement of the nourishment and waste, whatever you do, if it elevates your level of discomfort, find a different way. I have doctors say to me sometimes, well, that's kind of a general answer. I'm like, a general? Okay, let me see what part I missed. If it elevates your level of discomfort, find another way to do what I just said. You want to bring in the nourishment and flush out the waste. That's your goal.
So give an example of that with an injury and how you would, something like, let's say it's something like you've got knee pain, you're walking on it, trying to keep moving. That's still hurting. So you're saying like lie on your back and maybe do some bicycles or something like that. Something that doesn't bring the pain, but is continuing the movement that's keeping the blood circulating through there.
Okay, it's not just the blood circulating, though, just so you know. There's a lot more to it than that.
Okay.
It's the good stuff in, the bad stuff out.
Right.
It's the production and release of the myokines that drive or mediate the tissue regeneration process, which is continuing
Gary, I can't say that.
Oh, well, okay. So what happens is your muscles are this unbelievable pharmacy where everything you need to repair tissue is there. And when you load the tissue, when you activate those muscles, loading, that's what it's called in the literature. When you load the tissue, that causes the muscle to produce and release the myokines that drive or mediate the tissue regeneration process. Simultaneously, you're also evacuating the waste from that damaged site, which prevents the suffocation and killing of otherwise perfectly healthy cells that were not involved in the initial trauma. So that's why it's tissue preservation. Don't let any more lose. Don't lose any more than you already lost from the damage, and get back what you lost as quick as you can. Well, what's the one factor? What's the issue? Well, the issue is always congestion. Decongest the area. When you decongest it, the bad stuff goes out, the good stuff goes in, the myokines are produced and released by the muscles, and the tissue regenerates, and you prevent that loss from the suffocation or killing of the otherwise perfectly healthy cells that were not involved in the trauma, which is a direct result of the congestion. So pick something like you rolled your ankle. Your ankle's beginning to swell. You know it's going to swell. You can see it in front of your eyes. You see the black and blue. It's starting to swell. Okay. Why in the world would you wait till morning to deal with it? Well, I'll go to bed tonight and I'll see how it is in the morning. Or worse, you put a bag of ice on it and wrap tightly around it with an ace bandage and go to bed. Okay. That's even dumber than doing nothing. At least if you went to bed with nothing on, you'd be better off. Right. So now you look at it and you say, well, I know it's going to swell. How about if I think about this and say, how can I preserve and regenerate in that area? What do I have to do to preserve the tissue that was not damaged from the initial trauma? And how do I regenerate? Well, the first thing you have to do is decongest the area. There's no question about it. So long as the area is congested, the good stuff can't get on, the bad stuff can't get out.
So you just, start pumping the ankle.
Right away.
Yeah. Okay. Now I broke my ankle once. Thought it was a bad sprain. Didn't realize that, the bottom of my tibia just like exploded off. At that point, if I'm still pumping my ankle because I think it's a sprain, am I doing more damage? Or, what do I do in the meantime? I'm going, okay, I'm going to go to the hospital. I'm going to get an x-ray. I don't want it to swell up, but is moving it and pumping it going to do further damage? Well,
let me ask that question in reverse, and then I'll answer yours.
Okay.
Do you think it'd be a good idea to trap the waste in and around the damaged site and prevent the natural flow of oxygen supplies? You think that's going to help your break?
No.
Okay. So then let's start talking about what we can do instead. So what I can do instead is I can wiggle your toes.
Okay.
I can have you flex your quads. Maybe I can have you flex your calf area, your gastroc.
Oh, interesting.
Why do I have to worry about the spot that's damaged?
Gotcha.
And anyway, there's very little muscle around the ankle anyway. So there's not much muscle to activate there to get the pump going. See,
this is why everyone needs a Myopux.
well, there's more than one brand out there, and there's more than one way to do it. Ankle pumps work, by the way. In the training rooms, ankle pumps have been known for 50 years, where you just simply sit there and you pump your ankles. Okay, so there's more than one way to do it. It's the muscle activation or the loading of the tissue that does it. But let's just say that you did what the injury that you said. And we stop and we look at it and we say, okay, what are we going to do to solve this problem? I don't want to see the area congest because that's going to slow everything down. It's going to prevent the waste from getting out and the good stuff from getting in. So I don't want that to happen.
Right.
So what can I do to move it along? Well, the simple, easy question is, very important question, very easy to take care of. How's the waste evacuate? How's it work? Your goal is to evacuate the waste. How's that work?
I never thought of the whole concept of hitting the quad, hitting the toes, hitting the calf muscle, and then you're not doing any more damage to the injured part.
Okay, so here.
Hold on 1 second. I'm having a little. Sorry about that. My Zoom recorder was giving me a little difficulty.
Okay, so let me go to the big point on you.
Okay.
Okay, because here's what happens. You're trying to evacuate the waste because if it congests, it will suffocate and kill otherwise perfectly healthy cells that were not involved in the initial trauma, which will lead to faulty scarring and disc atrophy. All things that are going to push you further down that path to making it take 4 weeks instead of 2.
Gotcha.
Okay? It isn't the trauma. The problem is only a 2-week problem. But because you add on to it by suffocating and killing otherwise perfectly healthy cells because you're mismanaging the process, because you're trapping the waste in and around the damaged site and preventing the natural flow of oxygen supplies, because you did it wrong, because you mismanaged, what takes 2 weeks now takes 4, maybe 6.
Has anyone come out against you? And I mean, that article.
Not successfully.
But I mean, that guy that wrote the article, you said in the beginning, he sounds like he's for ice. By the end, he sounds like he's against ice. But what I mean is, are there any physical therapists or doctors out there that are saying, hey, I've heard what you've had to say and I disagree completely?
Not one. Not one.
So is it a revelation for even doctors? Do they go, wow, I never thought of that? Or
well, yes, but you're asking the question and saying something different. You said if they heard me.
Right.
I've never had anybody that heard me say I was wrong.
Right.
There are people who think they're smarter than everybody else. Like that fella has 17 letters after his names. He's on the medical staff at 2 major universities, and he's a global education director for a giant company. He thought he'd get away with it because he's so smart. Okay. It's not even, read my article. Okay, just go to my website, GaryReinl.com, read the article, The Cold Hard Facts.
How do you spell that for people?
Reinl. You get close. Put the Anti-Iceman and it'll pop right up. Okay? So you read my rebuttal to what he said. It's not even a contest.
Right.
It's not. When you're done reading it, you feel bad for the guy. I think he's in a closet in his bedroom. He hasn't come out in 3 months. Okay, so what happened was this. A guy called me up and he said, Gary, he said, so that guy's not very smart. And I said, no, actually, you're completely wrong. He's one of the smartest ones. He has 17 letters after his name. Really, by the way. Mm-hmm. 7, by the way, not initials. These are credentials. He's got 17 letters after his name. Yeah. He's on the staff or the faculty of 2 major universities. And he's the international global director of education for a giant company, a giant medical company. This is one of the best.
Right.
It's not even a contest. Because see, when you start trying to lie and support something that isn't true and you're messing with me, you're in big trouble.
So I think one of the problems is you get on the internet and there's a lot of these, not PubMed, but, WebMD and all these different things that have high SEO that show up quickly. And if someone types in, I sprained my ankle, what should I do? And the first couple things that come up are WebMD or, I don't know, whatever, something like WebMD. And they come up and they will tell you right away to ice your injury.
Of course.
That's always. So when do these publications start changing their ways and start getting with the times and saying, no, there's better ways and we need to stop printing outdated literature that's.
Oh, I prefer that they just say what we told you to do before was wrong and actually made things worse. And here's what you need to do.
Right.
But they're so like that guy who I wrote the rebuttal to the paper. He thinks he's right. Mm-hmm. He's always done it wrong. So because he's always done it wrong and the human body is so incredible, it actually gets better anyway, in spite of the fact that they interfere and screw things up. Yeah. You know, they trap the waste in and around the damaged site and they prevent the natural flow of oxygen supplies. They cause additional damage, but the body still recovers. Mm-hmm. So to them, 5, 6, 7, 8, 10 weeks is no problem. Mm. So I have someone who I will tell you off the air his actual name. Here I'm not going to say it because I don't think it's fair to him. Mm-hmm. But I have someone who is one of the top athletic trainers and doctor of physical therapists in the country, and is the head trainer for a team that there is no doubt everybody listening would know who it is. Mm. Okay, he sent me an email. He said, "Gary, I want to tell you what just happened. My athlete had a longitudinal quad tear." And by the way, I'll show you the email so you can be assured to tell your audience what I'm telling you is true. I don't think it's fair to say his name.
Yeah.
So he had a longitudinal quad tear of his athlete, and they measured the blood in the quad with ultrasound. And then they used the Mark Pro muscle activation device or the H-Wave. I'm not sure which one they used. They have both. He's a clinician, so he may use the Mark Pro off-label or he used the H-Wave on-label. I don't know which he did. Who cares? They pumped the muscle. At the end of 6.5 hours, the following morning, they measured the blood in the quad. His words, gone. Mm. Okay, now wait, it goes bigger. Period. We turned a 4 to 6 week injury into running in 3 days, playing in the world championships in 10.
Wow.
Now, you're tempted to think to yourself, well, that can't be possible. He said to me, Gary, I was shocked at how fast it sped up recovery doing what you said. I said, didn't speed it up. He said, no, Gary, I'm telling you, it's a 4 to 6 week problem. I said, no, it's a 4 to 6 week problem if you mismanage it. Yeah. You see, now we know how long it really takes. 3 days running in 10. That's how long it really takes. It takes 4 to 6 if you do this. You leave the blood sit there. It begins to congest. The congestion begets congestion. The swelling's down past the kneecap by the following morning. 3 days later, the whole leg is black and blue and her calves hurt. The athlete's calves hurt. Okay? Now you're on crutches. So now you're not moving. You're suffocating and killing otherwise perfect healthy cells that were not involved in the initial trauma. They're suffocating and dying from all the congestion. Mm-hmm. Because you're not moving, you have faulty scarring. As a result of, because you're not reorganizing, not repairing tissue. Right. As a result of that, not moving, you have disuse atrophy. So you begin to lose muscle, ligament, tendon, bone, everything begins to shrink. So now you're to a point several weeks out where the athlete begins to walk off crutches. Now you're at 4 weeks. Now you start working them back. Well, are you kidding me? If you do it right from the first minute, mm-hmm. You're running 3 days, you're playing the world championships in 10. And how many stories you want like that? If you want, I will show you pictures of actual cases that I'm talking about where the pictures are there. You see the swelling, you see it's gone. You see the outcome. And you go, well, if that's true, why doesn't everyone know that? Over 1 million people have heard my message. What do you want me to do? I'm doing the best I can. I got over 1 million people have heard it now. I go places and like I was telling you a little earlier, I think we were on air when I said I'm not sure, but I have people walk up and they want to get a picture with the Anti-Iceman to show whoever told them about me that they met me.
We got to get you on Joe Rogan. Joe would love you. He would love to hear you this.
I've actually sent him a couple of notes, and in fact, Misha Tate, someone that we both know, Misha was on his show, and I've done my best to get to him. But he has something in him where he doesn't want to talk to me. I don't know why. I don't know what the problem is. See, if he'd give me 3 minutes with him, 3 minutes, I guarantee he'd have me on a show. Because I would say, Joe, all the stuff you know, you're an expert in martial arts, you know all kind of things. I want to ask you, do you think it's a good idea to trap the waste in and around the damaged site and prevent the natural flow of oxygen supplies? Answer, Joe, yes or no. If you say, yes, it's a good idea, I'll leave, we'll never talk again. You say no, your audience is going to be woken up tonight.
So what about cryotherapy? Because, I know he's a fan of that. A lot of people are really into that right now. And I just, once I heard you, I was like, I'm not doing that.
Well, look, they're blowing cold air on you for 3 minutes. Okay. So let's get that straight. That has nothing to do with putting a bag of ice on a swollen joint and sitting still with it wrapped tightly with an ace bandage.
So it's different?
It's not even close to it. They blow cold air on you for 3 minutes. Okay. I went in it. I went. I get in the thing, and they blow this 200 and I tweeted it actually, a picture of me. I think minus 275 degree cold air they blew on me.
Right.
And they blow it all over you. And you're kind of a little bit creepy because they give you things for your fingertips and your toes, and they're not really concerned about other things.
Yeah.
And I said, guys, got a question. Do I need like a pad? You got my fingers and toes covered up, so I
got another digit that needs to be covered.
I'm not suggesting anything. I just told you what I asked them.
Yeah.
They said, no, it's okay. So they turned the thing on, and I'm watching it. Minus 150, minus 200, minus, and they're blowing this freezing cold air on me. And I get all done, and they said, what do you think? And I said, I think you just blew really cold air on me for 3 minutes. And they said, well, how do you feel? I said, I feel like it blew really cold air on me for 3 minutes.
As shit.
I don't know what you think was going to happen. If you feel your skin temperature, it's barely touched. It's still warm. It's not cold. Yeah. I mean, it's a little tiny cold. It doesn't get deep. It's not like putting a bag of ice on and stopping the healing process.
So what is their science? Are they saying they're constricting your blood vessels or dilating? The literature is, well, first of all, there is no one agrees it's a good idea. Okay. So you're not going to get, whoever you could present someone says it's a good idea, I will get you someone says it's a bad idea with equal credentials. Right.
Now, what does it do for you? You know what? If you say when you go in there, you feel great when you come out, good plan.
Yeah.
Because it probably doesn't hurt anything.
Yeah.
That's not the same thing as the RICE protocol, or what I say RIC is wrong. Rest, ice, compression, elevation. The RIC, R-I-C, RIC, rest, ice, compression. Rest, ice, compression is wrong. Blowing cold air on you, I don't think it makes a difference. And if you say it makes you happy, good for you.
Okay. So ice baths, no?
Well, it depends. If you want to dampen both the vascular and muscular adaptation to the work you just did, go in an ice bath after you train.
Yeah.
Because that's what the literature says happens.
What about for guys? Okay, so say they're just so banged up, these NFL football players that are bruised and pain and can't walk and can't move, and that just gives them a little bit of relief from
it does. Pain. If you make tissue cold, it will, not by blowing cold air on it. You have to actually put ice bags on it. If you make tissue cold, it will lessen your sensation of pain.
Yeah.
So that's really good, but I liken that to the sympathetic bartender that gives the alcoholic a drink so it can temporarily feel better. Yeah. Did you solve the problem? No. Did you make things worse? Probably.
Yeah.
So do you really want to sacrifice reduction of the sensation of pain temporarily? Because when the tissue rewarms, the pain's still there. The reason you have the pain did not go away because you made it cold. Whereas if you would decongest the area and find a neutral position, you'll actually get rid of most of the pain, maybe all of it.
Right.
So why are you taking something you think, well, I'll make it cold and it won't hurt. Well, why don't you get rid of the reason it hurts?
Okay. So in the rest, ice, compression, elevation protocol, compression. Now I understand not compressing an injury, but let's take compression when it comes to someone who flies often. And they want to wear compression socks so they won't get something like DVT. Is that, you're looking at me like I'm crazy again. You're still, no. Is it get up and walk around?
Of course.
That's what I thought. Because
why? Look, only compress the in vessels.
Right.
Whatever you are stopping from getting in, you are preventing from getting out.
Okay.
And by the way, that's no potential for debate there. I won't even entertain a debate about that. There is no way you can compress only the in vessels. It's impossible.
Right.
What you want to do is activate the muscles in and around the compromised site.
So everybody who's wearing these compression socks when they fly because they're worried about getting DVT, just get up and walk around. Move.
I'll bet you can't even find a vascular surgeon who would disagree with that.
Okay.
Okay? I mean, come on. Move. Wiggle your feet. In fact, Misha tells a funny story in the interview I did with her. Misha tells a story where she interviewed me, and then she went on a flight over to Thailand or something. And she said, it's right on the interview. You can hear her saying it. She said, I did what you said. I got up and I was doing like jump squats in the bathroom, and I walked up and down the aisles, and my legs felt great at the other end.
Yeah.
I'm like, well, of course. What'd you think was going to happen?
Yeah, I fly to Australia a lot. I get up a lot. I do stretches. I do squats. I lunge around. People think I'm weird, but I'm like, you know what? I'm not I don't need this. I fly too often. And plus I just don't want my muscles locking up and tightening up. And
you don't want the blood to pool.
Yeah.
So what you could also do, by the way, is you could take like the Mark Pro or anything like that. You could do ankle pumps. You could
on the plane, you can take a Mark Pro.
Oh, I do it all the time.
I'm not going to crash the plane.
No. I do it all the time. The other thing is, I do caution this. If you are going to take wires and hook them up to your body, warn the person next to you. Because you're liable to get tackled by 6 people.
That's hilarious.
So I do make a habit of saying, by the way, I'm an athletic person, and I'm using this for muscle recovery. And I show it to them. I say it's this brand, and my muscles are going to jump.
I am not blowing up this plane.
Oh my God! Be careful. Don't say those words ever on a plane. By the way,
I know.
Don't say that.
It's the one thing I don't joke about. I'll joke about. People always say to me, "Is there anything that's off limits?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I will not joke about that on the plane or saying." Threats about the president. Those are the 2 things that I don't even joke about because I don't need someone going, hey, we've got a copy of you saying blah, blah, blah. I just don't want to go to jail for that. Okay. Compression shorts, which I have a pair on right now, is just cycling. The only reason I wear them is because I don't want to chafe.
Okay. Does it work?
Yeah. That's all.
Just realize that anything you do that like Kelly Starrett, for example, the CrossFit guy.
Yeah.
Well, he's not really CrossFit anymore. He's more than that.
Yeah.
Kelly's way more than CrossFit.
Kelly's Mr. Everything.
Yeah. He's way past CrossFit now. But Kelly does something that he calls flossing.
Right. Yeah.
And that's not the same thing. Intermittent compression for the purpose he's doing as a skilled clinician is not the same thing as wrapping ace bandages around your foot.
I would have liked to have
for
talked
3
to you
days.
about this. Yeah. I'm glad you brought this up. So how is it different?
You're not doing it for 3 days.
You're doing it for 30 seconds.
And it has a purpose. Mm-hmm. He's trying to cause something that is measurable that he can show he caused. Mm-hmm. What you don't want to do is, and I've actually seen this, where the young athlete will, well, not young necessarily, but I saw it on a young athlete in a college training room. And he came in like 40 hours, 30 hours, 35 hours, whatever it was, after the injury. Like the injury was like on Friday night, and this is Monday morning, however many hours that is. And he's had the ace bandage on the whole time. His toes are purple.
Oh, jeez.
And up here, he's got like a bubble above the bandage, and there's no swelling in the leg. And I'm looking, I'm going, who's in charge? What are you doing? That which you trapped in.
Right.
Yes, you prevent it coming in, but you prevent it going out.
I get calls from friends all the time when they're hurt or something, and they go, oh, I can't surf, or I can't do this, I'm hurt. I'm just going to rest it. And I always go, I don't know if that's what you want to do.
No, that's not what you want to do.
You don't want to come surfing, or you might not want to come mountain biking, but don't rest it.
Now, rest is wrong.
Yeah.
In fact, again, anybody, when you ask that question, do people argue with me? I make it very hard to argue with me because I start off my talk by saying the following. If I could prove to you, not theoretical, if I could prove to you that the godfather of the Ice Age, the Harvard-trained physician, board-certified in 4 medical professions, if I could prove to you the guy who made up the Rice Protocol, if I could prove to you that he not only publicly recanted, said I made this up in my 1978 sports medicine book, research has clearly shown I was wrong. Don't do it. It delays healing and then gets a specific reference to the fact that it causes additional damage. If I could prove to you that the guy who made this mess up has recanted and then wrote the foreword to the Anti-Iceman's book, the guy who literally took down the most recognized protocol in Western medicine, which is me, by the way. I'm the Anti-Iceman. So I took down the most recognized protocol in Western medicine. I got the guy who made it up, the Harvard-trained doc who made it up, to recant and write the foreword to the book that took down his protocol. That's a pretty strong start to a conversation.
It's so funny, though, when I tell people this, when they go, what should I should rest or I should, and I go, listen, the guy who came up with that protocol wrote, and I explained to them all this, they still look at me like, you're lying.
Well, it's the most recognized protocol in Western medicine.
Is it really?
Oh yeah, well sure.
Rest ice compression. Yeah, I guess it is.
Every nurse, EMT, physical therapist, athletic trainer, doctor, parent, minister, everybody knows. Oh, race protocol.
Yeah.
Well, it's like why? Because rest ice compression elevation. Rice is nice. It rhymed, and now you're lost because now you don't have to do. Because if you don't do that, what do you do? I was actually asked a little bit ago, what do you think has to happen to make this go away? I said it's very simple. All you have to do is get every school nurse, every coach, every athletic trainer, every one of them in every category to the next time an athlete gets hurt, doesn't say put ice on it. Mm-hmm. They say activate the muscles in and around the damaged site. Now you win. But right now, every school nurse, bump your knee, put ice on it. Mm-hmm. Coach, put ice on it. Mm-hmm. Athletic trainer, put ice on it. Mm-hmm. So as soon as that stops, as soon as every nurse, coach, and athletic trainer, when you get hurt, the first thing they say to you is activate the muscles in and around the damaged site.
Well,
now the game's over.
We're at a good start here because this is a CrossFit podcast, and I believe a lot of things have been come through CrossFit, where CrossFit has found them through teachers like you, and then introduced them to their clients. And the clients trust in them and take it and then push the knowledge because everybody knows CrossFitters like to talk a lot and talk about what they do. So it's a good group to be vessels of your material. So I really think the CrossFit community has been very smart about recovery, and we know there's a lot of injuries in CrossFit. So it's a good group to go through.
Well, I'll say something that I don't think I'm saying out of school when I say this. I hope I'm not, because he's been very kind to me. But Greg Glassman, the gentleman that basically invented,
I've heard of him.
That invented the CrossFit thing. Greg read my book, sent me a very, very nice, what do you call that? A message back. A very nice message back to me. And then he said, I wish I had written your foreword. And I wrote back, 3rd edition's yours. Okay? It's yours. Yeah. So, but my point of that is Greg Glassman knows it and he's helping.
Yeah.
Now, I don't know how much he talks about me, but he read my book. I could tell by what he wrote back to me. So I know he read it. He's very kind to me whenever we communicate, whenever I see him, the few texts we've had back and forth. So you get somebody like Greg Glassman, and his influence is the CrossFit community is very big and very diverse. Greg Glassman speaks from the top.
Yeah.
Far exceed what I can do.
Yeah.
Now, why does it matter? Because I don't think anybody should ever lose a contest because they were mismanaged. You should lose a contest because your opponent was better than you.
Okay, so Glassman is at the top of CrossFit, so it's top down from him. He spreads the word to his underlings who then spread it to their clients. How do you get into the medical schools? How do you get into the American Medical Association? How do you get them to start saying, all right, we're going to change our literature. We're going to change our teaching. We're going to stop instituting this protocol, this RICE protocol. How do you get to them where they start saying this has to stop?
Well, right now I'm working through the athletic training schools.
Okay.
And so anybody who will have me come and speak, I go and speak. And with the athletic trainers, I've made very significant progress, a huge progress in Major League Baseball, by the way. Mm-hmm. I now have over 200 Major League pitchers. There's only 390, by the way. I have over 200 Major League pitchers listening to me. Now, they don't listen to me. I work with their trainers.
Right.
Their trainers have showed them.
Sure.
The interview I did with Corey Kluber about a year ago, who won the Cy Young that year, Corey said, I don't ice, makes my arm feel stiff, never liked how it felt. I use this muscle activation device, meaning Mark Pro, and my arm feels the best about my whole career. Mm-hmm. Okay, that's a huge start, because I looked at the medical people, the doctors, and I said, do I want to fight this group who doesn't really care about this issue, by the way? Mm-hmm. They worry about real stuff, like your knee's blown apart and I got to put it back together.
Right.
They're not worried about the compression, elevation, and ice. That's not. They don't care about that. Yeah. Okay, so who does care? Well, the individuals care. Mm-hmm. So I went to the athletic trainers, and that's who I primarily focus on, and I'm helping them. I believe by giving them the questions, And the biggest question I have is the one I've said multiple times. However, it's worth saying again. All you have to do is ask anybody in the field. By the way, I'll take on, you can give 5 orthopedic surgeons at once against me. Mm-hmm. And it won't even be a contest.
Right.
I'll wipe them out. They will either submit or they'll walk away and they'll look a fool. Because when I say, do you think it's a good idea to trap the waste in and around the damaged site and prevent the natural flow of oxygen supplies, and they say no, I say, then why do you recommend the Rice protocol post-op, post-trauma? There is no defense for what they're doing. It's wrong.
You hear that, you guys? There's no defense. So stop it right now.
Yeah, I wish. But now, if we go back, 10 years ago when I started doing my research, but 5 years ago.
Is this when did you start, when you were sure of this and you started telling everybody how?
Well, Kelly Starr is the first big person I told. Uh-huh. And what happened was Kelly had heard about me and asked if I'd come see him. I said, who is he? They said, oh, he's real big in the CrossFit world. I said, what's the CrossFit world? I had no idea what it was. And when I went to see him, he had a little, his gym was outdoors. It didn't have walls. It wasn't even a real place. It was a parking lot.
Yeah, CrossFit San Francisco.
And he had a little trailer with a light bulb hanging off the ceiling with a wire running to a building about 80 yards away. And we went in and we started talking. He said, please explain this to me. He was very nice to me. And I started explaining it. And he's listening, and he put his hand up. He said, please stop. And I went, oh. He goes, I get it. I'll never ice again. He said, please continue. And I thought, well, that was interesting. And he said, you got to come on my podcast, and you got to tell everybody. I said, Cal, I don't really want to do that. Because what I do right now is I only tell people what they want to hear. If I go on a podcast and tell the whole story, then I'll never be able to tell only what they want to hear again. Like, say before, someone would say to me, they would say to me, Gary, should I use ice before, after, or while using your Mark Pro device? And I would say, well, preferably not while you're using my product. And given a choice, I'd rather go first before the ice.
My physical therapist still does that when I go. He'll hook up a electronic muscle stimulator, a TENS device to me, and then throw like an ice pack over it. And I'm like, I don't want to argue with him. He's more well trained than I am, and I don't want to get in an argument as often. But I'm like, he's putting that ice thing on me.
Well, if you're using a TENS device for pain control,
right,
and ice simultaneously, they're both doing the same thing.
Yeah.
If you're using a muscle activation device, right, an electronic muscle stimulator,
right,
and ice at the same time, that's foolish. They're fighting each other. One's trying to increase the flow, the other's stopping the flow.
So the TENS device is stopping the flow?
The TENS device is designed for pain control.
Right.
So that,
but how does it work in the, because I was trying to explain this to my sister who has a bad back, and I hooked her up to one the other day, and I was trying to explain how it stops the pain.
Well, the reason you couldn't is because no one can. It's called a theory. It's called the gate theory. And the gate theory is that, and by the way, anybody can Google that. It's very easy to read. It's not a complicated thing because it's a theory.
Right.
If they knew, they would say, here's what we know.
Yeah.
They don't know. It's called the gate theory. And basically, your brain can't handle 2 signals at once.
That's what I thought.
So it interrupts the signal of pain, and you don't feel your pain because it's stronger. Mm-hmm. And that's how it does it. And when you turn it off, you still have your pain. You still have the reason you have the pain, and you didn't stop anything, except for you made it not hurt while it was on.
How long have they been using TENS machines?
Heavens.
Years and years and years.
I actually wrote a paper many years ago. There's record of it using electric eels back in 500 years ago.
Oh, my God.
Putting electric eels in a pail of water and putting your feet in.
Ugh.
Oh, yeah. I'll send you the article. It's very interesting.
Hilarious.
I wrote an article years ago about it, and people said to me the first time they read the article, like,
but couldn't there be some kind of, I mean, this is just my, I'm a hypochondriac and so neurotic, but couldn't there be, I mean, your entire body's an electrical system, and all of a sudden you're hooking up another electrical system to your body. Isn't there something there that's a little weird that you're...
Here's what we know. Since about 1978, mm-hmm. 77, somewhere around there, maybe early 80s before it was real popular, but right around that time, there have been electrical muscle stimulation and TENS devices common in the clinical setting. Mm-hmm. It's the most prescribed modality in Western medicine. Nothing more. There's nothing more than the TENS, E-stim. E-stim, not TENS, but E-stim is the most prescribed of all the modalities. And with that, every insurance company, including Medicare, pays for it. No one says I won't pay for it or it doesn't work or it's a bad thing. Mm-hmm. There have been, to my knowledge, no lawsuits whatsoever about it causing a long-term problem. Mm-hmm. And if there was, you'd hear about it because it's become so popular. But there's nothing.
Right.
And then you say, well, so it's been going on a long time. There's never been a problem. Does that make it safe? Well, the FDA gives warnings and contraindications to those kinds of products. And they have to do with using it with a pacemaker or putting it over a cancerous lesion and things like that. Mm-hmm. But nothing about not using it.
Right.
So do I think the government's right in this case? They've done a real good job of policing this one. Mm-hmm. And the FDA is, they say good things and bad things about the federal government. When it comes to stuff like this, they're pretty organized. And this has been around a long time. And the insurance companies, by the way, if there was a problem, they wouldn't pay for it.
Yeah.
So everybody pays for it. There's never been a reported issue. There's no litigation against long-term use with a problem. It appears to be pretty safe.
I'm a firm believer that if you are an athlete, and even if you're just an athlete, like, you're not a competitive athlete, you like to go running every day, or you just like to ride your mountain bike, or you swim, or you play tennis with your friends, but you do it regularly. I think as you get older, you need a whole bunch of things in you need like an armory of all your utensils and your weapons to help you rehabilitate. And over the years I've picked up so many things from watching Kelly, and I've got my voodoo floss, I've got my lacrosse balls, I've got my leopard claw, I use a Myopux now, and I use a Theragun a lot, and there's all these different things that I like to use, and the better I get at that, at performing and using these things on myself, the less injured I am. And it's just been amazing where something happens and I just almost look at it now like, I'll be okay. I can take care of it.
Well, if you can run a formula in your mind, and if you can't write it down, and I mean I know you get it, but for anybody listening, if just do this, anything that doesn't facilitate the preservation of existing tissue, of healthy tissue, and the regeneration of damaged tissue, if it doesn't do that, look for a different answer. So what doesn't do that? Well, obviously, the Rice Protocol doesn't do that. It's the opposite. Jumping up and down on a sore ankle until the ankle hurts so bad you can't stand up anymore. That's not good. Don't do that. So find things that lead you towards preserving and regenerating tissue. And then to understand that, all you have to say is, well, what facilitates that? And that is decongesting the area, loading the tissue to decongest the area, to get the muscles to contract and relax around the lymphatic vessels to, in effect, milk the cow backwards and get the waste out of the damaged site. Once you decongest the area, the next task, a very simple task, is to recapitalize the area around the damaged site. It's called angiogenesis if you want to look it up. But you've got to get the capillaries back around the damaged site that were destroyed. All that black and blue you see in the area, well, that's because blood leaked out and the capillaries were destroyed. So you've got to recapitalize the area around the damaged site. You've got to decongest the area. I suspect you have to decongest it first before you're going to recapitalize it. But the fact is, the same action, the same muscle loading causes both simultaneously. So that which gets the waste out simultaneously recapitalizes the area around the damaged site. So anything you do, if it doesn't do those two things, think again.
Don't do it. One last thing. My crazy Bobby, who's on the show every once in a while, was on last week. He's like a witch doctor, and he's always giving me these things, and it works. And he's anything from sickness to whatever. And he tore his rotator, had an electronic muscle stimulator on, and wore it every day for hours a day. And I was amazed by how fast he came back. He has always been a big fan of trampolines. And I said, why? And he said, they stimulate your lymphatic system or something like this.
It does.
And he said he jumps on a trampoline every day to get his lymphatic, so it's decongesting his whole body.
Actually, the first book that I ever read on this topic, it really was I didn't know what I was reading at the time. The book's called Jump.
Uh-huh.
And a guy wrote it back in the 70s, and it was a mini tramp.
Uh-huh.
And I read it, and I went, wow, I didn't know that's how it worked.
Uh-huh.
Well, guess what? That's how it works. We are designed, the human body is designed to self-repair, not self-destruct. It's contingent upon stress. The trampoline is a perfect stress. And you jump on it, and it causes the muscles to contract and relax around the lymphatic vessels. The lymphatic system is a passive system, nearly fully relying upon muscle activation around those vessels to move the waste. In effect, you milk the cow backwards. Right. So the fluid is in your ankle. You want to get it out. There's only one path out. One. Not 7. There's one. It's your lymphatic system. It's passive. So how do you move that waste out of your foot if it's swollen? Well, very simply. You activate the muscles in and around the area.
So let's say you wake up after you just did 2 CrossFit workouts the day before, and every part of your body's sore. You get on a trampoline and you just hop up and down for a while?
Absolutely.
Great.
In fact, it's very odd because these two companies have probably never thought of themselves of being similar, but there's a thing called a power plate. Mm-hmm. Where you stand on it and it vibrates you. Have you ever tried it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Crazy Bobby has one.
Okay. Crazy Bobby is really smart, by the way. Okay. I'm impressed with Crazy Bobby, even though he didn't have a Theragun. Did you guys get him a Theragun?
Crazy Bobby does not have a Theragun. Hunter wants the Theragun. And he was so mad the other day. He was at my house yelling about how he goes, I swear to God, I feel like that guy's just pushing my buttons and won't get me one. So he still does not have a Theragun. I do. I have the new one too, which is unbelievable.
The Pro 3 or something.
G3 Pro.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
With the articulating head and everything.
Oh, and I always tell him different ideas of things that he should do with it, and I have a new one for him. But it's that's a life changer.
Okay, now you bring up a very important point because I think that's a great product too, by the way. Now, when you're done using it, tell me what you do immediately upon finishing the Theragun.
Then it's time to flush the waste.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And what would be the exact wrong thing to do?
Rest.
Rest, ice, and compress it.
Yes.
Now, what do you think most people do after they do it?
They
leave the waste sitting in and around the damaged site, and well-meaning therapists and people in that category, no offense if you're one of them, I'm not angry at you, I just wish you would think, okay? When they get done using a tool like that, or their hands, or they may have used a hawk grip or whatever, one of those tools, they'll put ice on it.
Oh, God.
Because it hurts.
Yeah.
So they want to give the client relief.
Yeah, I think it was you that told me that roll out before I work out because I'm going to roll all that bad tissue and all that stuff and do that before, not after.
Well, okay, people do it for recovery.
Yeah.
Think about the absurdity of that. Yeah. How in the world could something designed to destroy tissue, to break adhesions, how could that be considered recovery?
Yep.
So, again, when you're done rolling out, pump it out. Get on the mini tramp. Get on a power plate. Get on a Mark Pro or the other brands that are out there. Activate your muscles. Get on a stationary bike with toe clips.
I used to think Bobby's power plate was crazy. Now I can't wait. Can't wait to get on it.
Well, remember what it's doing. Anytime you are trying to preserve or regenerate tissue, remember what your goal is: to decongest the area and recapitalize the area around the damaged site. What facilitates that? Loading, muscle activation.
Yep.
There. By the way, again, there aren't 7 things. There's one. You got to load the tissue. If you don't load the tissue, it shrinks. And remember about inflammation. It's very important about inflammation. There is not too much inflammation. There's simply too little evacuation. And that is so key to the whole understanding because you're tempted to want to block the inflammatory response.
Right.
Okay, that's because the pharmaceuticals are brilliant, the companies are brilliant, and they've convinced you of that. When actually every clinical textbook, there's not an exception, every one that talks about the healing process says there are 3 steps: inflammation, repair, remodel, and musculoskeletal damage.
Okay, one last thing before we go. In saying that, just to try to, I know they're 2 completely separate things, but when you talk about, heart disease an inflammation in the heart, and your cholesterol is going to fight the inflammation, and it gets clogged in the arteries, and that's why cholesterol is bad, because cholesterol is not bad, but what happens, cholesterol getting clogged in the arteries is bad. But you've got this inflammation in the heart, so that inflammation is bad, correct? Because that inflammation is causing congestion in the arteries.
It depends on what you want to believe. I'm a musculoskeletal guy, so I don't want to really go here, but
Okay.
I'll answer your question.
Because it's just, I'm
going to answer your question. It's not my area. Don't get crazy over it if you're a cardiac surgeon, okay? That's not the problem. It's the reason the cholesterol's being upregulated. That's the problem. So what's causing the upregulation? Is it that you eat really bad food? Is it that you don't exercise? Is it that there isn't enough circulation in your body? You're developing peripheral artery disease? What's the reason for the increased cholesterol?
But isn't the increased cholesterol because of the inflammation?
The inflammation is the result of the damage.
Mm-hmm.
So
what is the damage? What caused the damage?
The free radicals, we're out of my category, okay? We're out of my category. But because I'm old and because I read this stuff and talk to people who are experts, I'm going to say something that I do not want to debate. The free radicals ding the inside of the arteries and cause damage.
Okay, I see.
That damage is then repaired by the cholesterol.
Okay, I got you then.
So if you look up cholesterol, it's actually gets all A ratings.
Yeah.
It gets all A ratings. It's like, don't mess with this stuff. It's what keeps
we
you
need it in our brain.
Without it, you're screwed.
Yeah.
So
I just was curious, trying to equate the two, thinking like the muscle's a heart, the heart's a muscle, and there's inflammation in the heart, and why, obviously we don't want congestion in our arteries, but like in our muscular system, we want the inflammatory process to happen, and then we want to decongest it. Why wouldn't we? Every doctor you speak to is like, well, we don't want the inflammatory process in the heart. And I never thought of it as though, what is the damage to the heart?
Yeah. Why do you have it?
Yeah.
Okay. If you said to me, get hit by a foul ball off your shin, your shin starts to swell right in front of your eyes. It's all black and blue. There is an inflammatory response that began instantly.
Right.
The instant that first drop of the blood exited that vessel, the inflammatory response began. It's supposed to do that. That's good. It's not bad.
Yeah.
And if I have very clear arteries, okay, being a vegan for 45 years and running all these years and lifting weights, and I wear the same size clothes I wore when I graduated high school. Okay. So I didn't do any of the foolish things that people do. I'm not as muscular as I was back then.
You never hit the booze?
No.
None at all?
No alcohol, no drugs.
Wow.
Nothing. In fact, I didn't even toast at my own wedding.
Wow.
So
you never had a drop of alcohol?
No, let's not go that far. The legal drinking age was 18 when I was growing up. So there were a bad 3 years.
Okay.
But the good news is
I never trusted a man that's never had a drink.
No, there was a bad 3 years.
Yeah.
And I realized that wasn't a good plan for me. And I've never drank again. I don't do any alcohol, any drugs. I don't take aspirin. I don't do anything like that.
No bath salts? You're not taking the bath salts?
What's that?
It's a drug that people take, and then they want to eat people's faces. It's like the craziest drug there is.
No, I don't want to do that. I'll pass on that one.
Bath salts. It's I don't know. It's something like meth and PCP.
No, I've never even seen meth.
Yeah. Okay. Just wanted to, just
as far as I know, I've never been in the same room as meth.
Yeah, it'd be really funny if you're like, I don't do any of those. I just smoke crack once a week. Once a week, I like to hit the crack pipe and.
No, I'm pretty sure I've never been in the same room as crack either.
I find that funny. This is on a total tangent, but we're closing this up, so I find this funny. They always say that the argument against marijuana used to be that it was a gateway drug to other drugs like heroin and cocaine. And I used to say to people, I think someone that does heroin has no problem doing every other drug. Like, it's not that those drugs led them to that. They were just willing to do everything. Yeah. So I don't believe that to be true. I'm not a big advocate like, hey, pot's the best thing in the world. But I don't believe it's a gateway drug.
I have been very fortunate that at a very young age, I realized right from wrong for me. I don't judge anybody else, but for me, alcohol and drugs are a bad plan.
Yeah.
And eating
for a lot of people, they are.
eating animal products.
What caused you to go vegan?
I realized that there were good and bad food. Mm-hmm. And what I did, and you'll like this, actually. You're going to really like this because I give them what you're like, that this is going to work. I made a list. On the top of the list, I put water. On the bottom, I put arsenic. And then I filled in everything that I knew I ate. I was 20 years old when I did this.
Wow.
Okay. So down the bottom was like bacon.
Right.
And then up here were grapes.
Right.
And I looked at the list. I drew a line across. I never ate anything on the bottom of the list ever again the rest of my life. And I worked my way up the list to where I finally got to the point where I no longer ate cooked nuts. And you go, what did you do? Well, I made a list. How else? How would you do it?
Do you soak your nuts?
I don't.
Okay.
I don't. But I do eat some. Like I'll go to Whole Foods and things, and I'll buy things like that.
Yeah.
Especially sprouts.
Yeah.
But it's one of those things where you go, well, so you mean you ate cooked roasted almonds, but now you don't. Right. But when I made my list, I just wrote almonds. I didn't even know they were roasted.
Yeah.
And then I was like, oh, got a new category.
I think that happens with everybody where, like if I look at my 20s, I probably ate chicken and rice a lot. I thought chicken and rice is healthy. That's going to be my thing. And I would eat, I would go to a fast food restaurant. I thought getting grilled chicken sandwiches was better than eating a burger. And I would, as I evolved, I was shedding things to where you'd have to force feed McDonald's on me at this point. Like really, you'd have to hold me down to put, like if you said to me, I'll give you $50 to eat that Big Mac, I'd be like, I can't do it. I can't eat that thing. And, like to where the only beef I almost eat ever now has to be grass fed. And, I'm very particular about a lot of my salt. I'm particular about but it was a long process. And it wasn't just one day I went, all these are out and all these are in. I had to slowly cut things out of my life.
No, that's what I did. I just wrote a list down.
Yeah.
And my list made perfect sense to me.
Yeah.
When you think about it, could you write down everything you eat? You could. If you want to, you could write it all down. And would you be able to decide that a raw cashew was better than bacon? Yeah.
There's an argument there.
Come on.
Raw cashews are toxic. They grow on top of an apple. Okay. Did you know that? And the apple's poisonous.
No, I didn't.
Yeah, so the apple's poisonous.
Oh, no. I got to redo my list.
Yeah. The apple's poisonous. And so the cashews have to be processed because the apple is, if you eat that apple, you'd get really, really violently ill. And so cashews are not on the paleo list because of that, because they're processed and you can't eat them raw.
Okay, so here's the new thing.
Cashews are out.
I'm going to have to look that up and revise my list. But by the way, that's how I took things off my list.
Sure. Well, it's a great trivia question too. I've asked 1 million people that question. Where do cashews grow? And I don't think anyone's ever gotten it right. Every time people are like, the closest they get is on a tree, in the ground, or in a shell, and nobody knows. And then you go, it's the stem of an apple. And,
I didn't know that.
And when I say that, they go, "Wow, I never knew that."
Okay, so now you see how my list evolved over the past 45 years. And like when I found out what gelatin was, who knew?
Yeah.
It's the remains
Collagen.
on the slaughter room floor.
Yeah, it's pretty gross.
It's that which they couldn't name something else and sell at the butcher.
Yeah, it's pretty gross.
And they scrape it up, they cook in the vat, they're forced to take it to a high temperature, and then that's JELLO.
I always thought Jello was disgusting, and I always knew Bill Cosby was a creep. It's always the cleanest comics who are the creepiest. I swear to God, every one of them. The ones who are so pious and talk about how good they are always the ones. And Cosby was the one telling all the other comics that they need to clean up their acts. He was always the one. He used to call them on the phone. He called Eddie Murphy. He told Dave Chappelle. Told them all to clean up their acts.
Wow.
Yeah. Well, So on that note,
he's cleaning up his act right now, isn't he?
hey. Well, thank you, Gary. Thank you so much for coming by. I'm so glad we could have you on again. We hit a lot of the points we talked about before and expanded on so many of them. And I think this is crucial that everyone listens to this. And not just, look, I like people listening to my show and it helps me and helps my career and whatever it is. But I think this is an important message that everybody out there that I sound like a dick a lot of times, but I really want to see people get healthy and be happy and not be in pain and not be hurt and deal with injuries and live long and happy and healthy. And one of the ways they can do it is by stopping the rice protocol, reading Gary's book. It's called de-iced, right?
It's called Iced.
Iced. Why
the
did I say
illusionary
de-iced?
treatment option.
Iced. And you can get it on Amazon.
Yeah.
And it's really, really important that this word gets spread because I think this is one of those things that you're like a guy that's changing the world, and that's pretty cool to know that you've done that. And I tell dick jokes. You're changing the world, but I'm helping by getting you out there to these people. So spread the word, and don't ever throw that ice pack on there again unless you have a severed limb.
Well, that's a good point.
Yeah.
The point that you just made is so important to me. And again, I'm going to repeat what I said earlier, but it's the point, a great ending point. I was asked during the World Series last year, you work with both teams, right? I said, yeah. They said, who do you want to win? I said, I don't care. And the person said to me, hey, come on, you got to care. I said, I don't care. The only thing I care about is the team that wins because they're the better team, not because the players were mismanaged. That's all I care about. I don't care who wins. I really don't care who wins, by the way. But if you told me that you lost because your trainers and therapists and doctors mismanaged you by using the rice protocol, and you lost, and you don't know if you lost because you weren't as good as your opponent or because you were mismanaged, that's unacceptable. No one in athletics, no one in anything, should lose because they're mismanaged. You should lose because your opponent's better.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Gary. And thanks for listening. Make sure you go to iTunes, rate, review, comment, and check out all my dates at eddyift.com. And you can do everything else at wadcastpodcast.com. Thanks, guys. Have a good week.